I'm JT. I'm in my mid-30s, have a 10-year media career, and nearly a decade of sobriety. So how did another middle-class kid turn into a blackout drunk and a heroin junkie? More importantly, how did it change, and where do we go from here? This is my story. So today I want to talk about relationships and how both my addiction through my life before I got sober and how my sobriety now affects my relationships, most specifically my romantic relationships with significant others. As usual, if you have any questions, comments, we want to bring your ideas and your thoughts to the video. So as usual, DM me on any of the following places or leave a comment in the comment section here on this video for next time. I have never really talked about my romantic relationships over the air. There's a couple reasons for this, but number one, the format of radio that I do doesn't really lend itself to that. It's not about my personal life. The second reason a lot of people decide to keep their personal relationships quiet when they are a quote-unquote public figure. And that's because the other person might not have necessarily signed up for this. They may not want to get drug into these different situations. I personally think the people who are best at this are open about their relationships and their partners are understanding. But here we are today. So one relationship many of you may know about is my dog, Fox. You may have noticed that I haven't posted about him a lot recently. And the reason for that is that Fox has a mom. And Fox's mom no longer lives here with me, and he's living with her. Fox's mom had an opportunity in a different state, and she took that opportunity. And this has been really difficult for me. And this is where I am today. And for a lot of reasons, I didn't have the outlet to talk about my personal relationships before today. But basically, the whole time that I've been on the air, I've been in what ended up being a 5.5-year relationship with Fox's mom, as I'll call her. And today we are where we are for a lot of reasons. But that's why I wanted to talk about relationships, because it directly affects where I am today. You know, just over 1.5 years ago, I built a house, and although I didn't talk about it a lot on social media and certainly not over the air, I was building a life with my significant other, this person that I've been with for over 5.5 years, a person that I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life with. And today, I'm alone. And that's part of the reason I wanted to talk about this today, is because I don't want to be alone forever. I don't want to be in this situation, but here we are. And a lot of things have led to this. Look, an opportunity for my significant other led to me being single today, but a lot of other things led to it as well. And it all kind of came to a head actually last year when we became homeowners together. We built a house together. And a lot of changes happened in my life right around that time. Number one, became a homeowner, went from never thinking I would own a home, okay, to being a homeowner for the first time, not living with my significant other, to all of a sudden having all this responsibility, a brand new house, a life to build together. And by the way, basically as soon as we moved in, we started having major problems with the house. And it was a huge source of conflict between the two of us. I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't ready for how I was going to react to these things. I don't think she was ready for dealing with my reaction to these things. And a couple months after we moved in the house, so we've got these issues with the house. And then on top of that, as you may know, my mom passed away around April of last year. So I was going through a lot of change. Now, this is kind of a three-pronged thing that leads us to where we are today, but I realized that from becoming a homeowner, turns out I really like building my life with someone. I really like building a house with a significant other and coming home to my family. I didn't think that was going to be something that was really personal and beneficial to me, but it turns out it's something that I enjoyed greatly. On top of that, like I said, I lost my mom. And so now I'm dealing with the emotions of losing my mom, but also thinking about my own life and where I want my life to end up as I grow older. The other thing that happened was my sister had her son a couple of years ago, my nephew, Whit. And so I've got some significant, really big life changes going on all at the same time. And my significant other, we have both planned to be together forever. A little unorthodox, a little bit of a 2020 relationship. Neither one of us ever wanted to get married. We didn't want to have kids, but we wanted to be life partners together forever. We were both really ambitious with our careers, so it all kind of lined up. It all kind of made sense. And then one day, 5 years into our relationship, about 6 to 8 months into being homeowners together, I woke up one day, and for the first time in my entire life, 33 years being on this planet, I wanted kids. I wanted to have a family. My perspective completely changed. It was almost like it happened out of nowhere. Now, I know that it was all these circumstances, right, that led up to it, but for me, my perspective completely changed, and something that an entire relationship was kind of built upon entirely changed, and that coincided right with both the conflicts in our relationship, a lot of that on me, my selfish behavior, my temper, my not really handling the issues with our house right, and her getting this opportunity all led to me being single right now. And now I'm faced with, being not necessarily a spring chicken anymore. I'm in my mid-30s and I'm alone, and I just decided that I want to have a family. Now, there's certainly no woe is me, but it made me start reflecting on how I got here, because I don't want to end up alone. I want to build my life with someone. I want to have a family. And that's going to be a challenge, not only right now being single all of a sudden, but in the time of coronavirus. And trust me, I've had a few months to deal with it now. And dating in the time of COVID, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Much like I wouldn't wish heroin withdrawals on my worst enemy, I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy either. But it's had me reflecting a lot on my past relationships. And look, just like anyone else, it goes back to everything else. My parents are the thing that informs my own relationships the most, right? And if you know anything about me and watching the previous video, my parents' relationship was no model on a successful relationship. It didn't last. It was marred with conflict. And if anything, all it taught me was negative things about relationships. I saw how it affected both of my parents. Both of my parents never remarried. My mom passed away having never been married. My dad is still single today. And while both my parents have happy lives and my mom passed away surrounded by hundreds of people who loved her, it helped me decide that I don't want that. I want to live my life with someone else. I look back at how that relationship between my parents and how my addiction and life before addiction related to all my relationships. My first serious relationship started when I was 14 years old. Now, this is a kid that's starting to discover drugs and alcohol, that's living with this emptiness, right? If you've heard me talk about addiction and my addiction, I was always searching to fill that emptiness. And some of the times I was certainly searching to fill it through relationships, through sex, through romance, through a significant other. And that started when I was 14. Basically, no modeling on how to have a good, successful relationship. When I'm 14, I end up having this really dramatic relationship that, looking back, was not something that I should have been getting into at 14 years old. I had no business really being in something that serious. With me, especially being as sensitive as I was at that time, feeling feelings as deep as I did. And there was a lot of damage that was done at that time. No regrets about it. And I certainly learned from that, and I've grown from that. As soon as I started having relationships, my addict brain, my addict heart, my addict mindset started affecting the relationships. And this carried on into my second significant relationship, which was my high school relationship. Now we have a relationship that was really fueled on my part by drugs and alcohol. There was a lot of emotions and fights and a lot of drinking on both our parts. I remember one of my friends said one time after a night out with me and my high school girlfriend, I woke up and just thought it had been another night on the town. And my friend said, I've never heard two people in a relationship speak to each other the way that you did. And I kind of thought twice about it. And I'm like, oh man, maybe we got in a pretty bad fight. But again, number one, I was an alcoholic and a drug addict. My behavior was awful. And number two, I didn't have any modeling on how to treat a significant other. And so I'm learning as I go here, but causing a lot of damage. Now, my third really significant relationship was in college, and it was a quite serious relationship. We were certainly in love, but this is the time that I'm starting to get hooked on opiates and heroin. And that informed that relationship as well. This person was a really sweet, caring person, and I really abused and manipulated that situation. I've had a lot of regrets about that, and one of the things through recovery that we're taught is how to deal with guilt and shame and how to not let that debilitate your life today. But this relationship in particular, I did a lot of damage. I mean, for example, there was a time in college where me and my dad weren't talking, and I was living on the lam, as this alcoholic and drug addict. But my girlfriend took me in and paid my bills, and that was the only way I had a place to live. And lo and behold, this person who was taking such good care of me and supplying me the only shelter or food I had in my life, and I was treating her like shit. And, those are things that I have to live with today. And in recovery, we have the process of amends, and that's one of the amends I've never been able to make. They say that you shouldn't make amends where it might cause harm to the other person. And in this case, this person has not wanted to hear me out on that, and I understand that. I don't want to hurt or damage her life anymore. I don't want to cause any more pain to it. I certainly already caused enough. But I have a lot of regrets of how I handled that. I wish I could have done better. That was my last relationship that I had on drugs and alcohol. As I got sober, another thing they tell you is try not to do any dating or get into relationships until you've been clean for about a year. There's a reason for this, okay? Because I look back and I followed the rules really strictly my first few years into sobriety. And I waited until I was about, a year and a half, 2 years sober before I did anything like dating or relationships. And I look back now and I had no business being in a relationship even that early. Because what happened for me in my first serious relationship in recovery, I started to notice behaviors that were coming up from my addictive behavior, but now being sober, not using drugs and alcohol, they were making themselves known through my relationship. I started clinging to things like sex, sexual behavior. Now I've had to do all this work on love and sex addiction because all of a sudden I realize I've got this problem with addiction to love and sex in a relationship and how that can come in between two people. It was really a lot to go through, and I can see why they say don't get into that so early, because if I had really been any earlier on in my sobriety and gone through the things I went through in my first sober relationship, I don't know if I would have made it. I kind of got by on the skin of my teeth anyways through that one. But I learned a lot. I learned that sex is something that I really have to monitor in a relationship, and I can't be in a relationship for something like sex. It's really helped me a lot. I have, certain rules and guidelines I go through when I'm dating somebody about, I'm going to not do this until I know that I can get through this okay. And it's really helped me a lot. Unfortunately, there was, some damage done in that relationship, but I've had to learn from it. And this kind of brings up another point for people in recovery that have to go through in sobriety, because obviously in a relationship, whether it's meeting someone or going out socially with someone, alcohol is part of social life, especially as a young person. That's something that anyone going through recovery has to learn to work through. Now, some people can just not go out to bars or anywhere there's going to be alcohol and be totally fine. I tend to think that there's some
balance there. I don't know if it's the most healthy thing, certainly not for me to like totally stay away from it altogether. For me, early on, I wanted to make sure that I could go out with my friends and have a good time without drinking. And today, there's some balance. It's somewhere in between. The longer I'm sober, the less I want to be around drunk people. It's just turned out. But in a relationship, this can be tough because generally what I found is early on, once you have that conversation with someone and you give them all the gory details, well, now they can just go look on YouTube and get the full story. But there's a lot of acceptance, right? There's a lot of acceptance in our culture right now of, oh, that's really great. That's awesome. I want to be supportive of anyone who's got any sort of mental health condition. And if someone's not drinking or not using anymore, that's something we can really get behind. That's awesome. And that's great. But what I found is the longer I'm in a relationship, the longer it actually ends up coming between us, because inevitably this other person has friends that they want to go out with and have a good time with, and they want you to be a part of that. Now, for me, I've had to set strict guidelines for myself of how I'm going to deal with being out in a crowd with drinking going on, sometimes with drugs going on. And a lot of that is, setting sort of self-timers of when I know here's a couple signs of I need to get out of there, or here's the amount of time I know I can stay in a bar without getting a little edgy, and then all of a sudden I'm a dick to someone for no reason, and nobody wants that. In my experience, that's become really hard to navigate with a significant other of, hey, your friends might kind of get a little bit out of control sometimes, and that's not healthy for me to be around, and I don't know if I can go out with them anymore. And then all of a sudden their friends are asking, well, where's he? Why is he not coming out anymore? Where's JT? Why isn't he want to come to this event or that event? It can really come between two people, and that's something I'm still navigating today. And look, part of it is my own failures. Like I said, I can be a jerk. I can say, no, I don't want any part of that, or end up piping off or getting snappy. That's something you have to work through in a relationship, and it's something I'm working through every day to day. Look, I just failed miserably in that department, which is why I'm sitting here with you today, single, and, wondering what the rest of my life looks like in the relationship department. But like everything in recovery, I'm learning day to day. I'm failing day to day, and I'm going to keep you updated on my failures and hopefully my successes too. Hey family, if you like what we're doing here and you want to see more, please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. Share it with someone who you think might benefit from watching this, and feel free to comment below. Love.